There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify to the light so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. And this is the testimony given by John when the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" He confessed and did not deny it, but confessed, "I am not the Messiah." And they asked him, "Well, what then? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I am not." "Are you a prophet?" He answered, "No." Then they said to him, "Well, who are you? Let us have an answer for those who sent us. What do you say about yourself?" And he said, "I am the voice of one crying out in the wilderness, 'Make straight the way of the Lord,' as the prophet Isaiah said." Now they had been sent from the Pharisees. They asked him, "Why then are you baptizing if you are neither the Messiah, nor Elijah, nor the prophet?" John answered them, "I baptize with water. Among you stands one whom you do not know, the one who is coming after me. I am not worthy to untie the thong of his sandal." This took place in Bethany across the Jordan, where John was baptizing. This is the word of the Lord. Let us say, thanks be to God. My sermon, Nothing to Prove, is based on Isaiah 61 and primarily John chapter 1 for the third Sunday of Advent. 13 years ago, when I was trying to find my first position and my first church to serve as a pastor, I received a call from the chair of a pastor and nominating committee in a church outside Detroit. He explained a bit about the church's mission and history and wondered if I would be interested in interviewing for their position to be their pastor. At the time that he called, I had just received and accepted a call from another church in Iowa, so I, as gracefully as I could, declined and explained the situation, and he understood. But before he ended the conversation, he said something that I have never forgotten. He said, "Well, I was hoping you would be someone who didn't have anything to prove, and you could come out and help our church live out its mission." That conversation was over 13 years ago, and I still remember those words, and I still remember the way he said them. Nothing to prove. I'm still trying to find the wisdom in those words and trying to live them out as best as I can. John the Baptist is someone that we can look at who lived a life with nothing to prove for himself. He was incomplete, he was rough, unfinished, unpolished. He was the voice crying out in the wilderness. He had no power, he had no position, he had no privilege. 12 days before Christmas, John stands out like a sore thumb. With all the superficial posturing and all of our narcissistic tendencies, John is so conspicuous because John had nothing to prove. Look at what happens in the story related to us in the first chapter of the Gospel of John. The writer tells us that John was not the light, but that he came to testify to the light. And then beginning in verse 19, the storyteller relates how John was out in the wilderness, minding his own business, carrying out the work that God had sent him to do. He was baptizing them, getting them ready for the advent, the coming of the Messiah. When the religious authorities show up and begin questioning him, "Who are you? Are you the Messiah? Are you Elijah? Are you the prophet?" And if you're none of these things, then why are you doing what you're doing? We have to have an answer. And as far as we can see, you have no business. And John doesn't really answer any of their questions. He doesn't feel the need to explain. He doesn't try to justify himself. He doesn't try to prove himself. We tend to easily dismiss John as crazy, what with his camel hair clothing and the eating of wild honey and locusts. But we do that to our own peril, because if we can't know John, then we won't know Jesus either. And knowing John is so liberating, for there really is a gift of having nothing to prove. You see, John was so completely unencumbered by pretense. He had no inhibitions. He was free, liberated, unself-conscious. He was completely himself. How many of us can say that? You see, people act crazy when they have nothing to lose, but people become more themselves when they have nothing to prove. 3 things we can say about John from these very short verses. He knows who he is not. He says very clearly, I am not the Messiah. He also knows very clearly who he is. I am the voice of one crying out in the wilderness. And third, John has a certitude for life. He lives humbly because he is humble. He has nothing to prove. So as a result, he's able to keep the focus on God. And everything he shows, I'm here to serve. I am not worthy to bend down and untie his shoes. I only have water, but he brings the Holy Spirit. The more powerful one is coming. I am here to prepare the way. I recently saw a commercial, and I really honestly can't remember what the commercial was for, but there is perhaps you've seen it, there's a commercial of a family that's out in their front yard hiding within these trees. And they are apparently so ashamed about something that they own or don't have that they are hiding in these fake trees in their front lawn, and they peer out from these trees until they are sure that none of the neighbors can see them until the coast is clear, then they can move. Maybe you'll see that commercial this afternoon during the Cowboys game. You see, we are so trained to believe that we are the center of our lives and that life is all about us. And the paradox is this, that life in America, that while we think so highly of ourselves, then we are so constantly trying to prove ourselves worthy. Am I attractive? Am I smart enough? Am I good enough? Will I be accepted? Do the people love me? Do the right people love me? And the truth is, nobody really cares. There's no need to hide in fake trees, no need to hide and try to avoid public shame. Just be who God created you to be. Think of all the havoc and chaos caused by our friends and our family members who feel the need to constantly prove themselves. Think of all the havoc and chaos caused by leaders both locally and nationally who are not serving the common good, but are still trying to prove who they are. Christianity and all great spirituality teaches us the exact opposite, that there's nothing wrong with losing. In fact, it's a sign of spiritual health and emotional health to admit defeat. Paul said in the letter to Philippi, I count everything as loss for the surpassing value of knowing Jesus Christ as Lord. So think of people who have made your life better because they know who they are and they have nothing to prove. I will mention two that I've met within the last year. This worst year ever, 2020, I've gotten to know better the Forney High School principal, Dr. Jonathan Campbell, and also the new band director at Forney High School, Mr. Cody Newman. Of course, there are others, but these are two men who demonstrate great character. They use their gifts and their skills in a positive way to make students' lives better. And as a result, our community is in a better place because of how they lead. I'm grateful for them, and I've told them so. And I encourage you to find people in your lives and tell them for Christmas as a gift what a gift they are. It's so refreshing to be around people who are humble, people who are focused on others, like John. Think about it, the gift of just doing your job, minding your own business, and doing what you can to be a normal human, if we even know what that is. No need to tweet about it. No need to post a video on YouTube about your latest idea. No TED Talk showing the greatest idea that will save the world. No need to preach the greatest sermon ever. No need to win the prize for the best pie. No need to win at playing Uno or Monopoly, just loving and being loved and being okay with doing what you can to make someone else's life better. I'm sure we've all had people say things about us that weren't true, try to twist our words and misrepresent what we meant. I still have people say things about me. The world is always going to come to us, just like the leaders came to John. What do you have to say for yourself? Prove yourself. And we can play the game if we so choose. We can try to explain, we can complain, we can justify our actions, we can defend ourselves, we can champion our cause and prove ourselves and make sure that everybody knows our side of the story. Or we can take a cue from John. So what? Haters gonna hate. Or the wise Ariana Grande, thank you next, thank you next. When I'm at my best, I remember it's not about proving anything to anyone. It's about loving everyone the best I can. And of course, I don't always do that. But at my best, I love my kids, I love my friends and my family, not to prove a point at all, not to make my way known, not to fix or control, but just to love. You see, love is its own reward. So I invite you to ask yourself today and this week, when you get frustrated and angry or despairing, ask yourself, what am I trying to prove? And is it really necessary to do so? Am I trying to be the light, or am I trying to point to the light? And how can I love more simply and simply love those whom God has placed in my life? And when people ask you, 12 days with Christmas coming, are you ready for Christmas? Which they more often than not mean, have you got all your Christmas shopping done? You can say, no, I'm not ready for Christmas, not yet. I have to go out to the wilderness. I have to spend time with John. I have to get over myself, practice testifying to the light. And then, by God's grace, then I'll be ready for Christmas.